Hello friends, very good morning to all of you. So today we are going to discuss PF28 part 1, that is grants in OAuth. So we'll just try to understand what is grant in OAuth, what are the different grants we have in OAuth, just a kind of definition, and then from the next section we can just jump to the details basically, like how we can configure that in grants, what is the workflow of the grant, and then we can just do some testing also using Postman. Yeah, so let's begin. So grants in OAuth. So let me go to the next slide. So what is this access token? It is the heart of any communication which is happening in OAuth 2.0 standard. So if you remember that, like in the SAML communication, we have, if I can say, the heart of any communication here, that is assertion, SAML assertion, right? So in the similar way, in the case of OAuth, access token, it is the heart of any communication which is happening in OAuth 2.0 standard. And the generation of access token is called as grant. So maybe we are talking about grants, different types of grant. So grant is nothing but the generation of access token. That means, like once we just jump to the different grants, you can see in all the grants we have a different workflow, but the main goal is to generate an access token in a different way. So that's why we call it as authorization code grant, implicit grant, ROPC grant, like that. So in this all grants, we are trying to generate an access token using that method, using different workflow method. So that's why the generation of access token is called as grant. It is nothing like else here. Let's go to next. So these are the different types of grants which we are going to discuss further. But in this session, we are just trying to get an just definition kind of thing. So you have authorization code grant, you have authorization code with PKCE grant, implicit grant, then resource owner password credential grant, then you have client credential grant, then you have device flow grant, then you have refresh token grant. So we'll just try to understand this grant on a very detailed way in further session. Like we can just try to understand the workflow of this, what is the use case, why we're using that grant, and how we can configure in PingFederate, and then how we can test. So for testing, you can use OAuth Playground application, as I told in the beginning, or you can just use Postman. So I'll show you using Postman, but you can just just install that OAuth Playground application also, and then you can just basically that application work as a client, and then you can do your testing with all these grants. Okay, so let's understand auth code flow. So what it says, the authorization code grant type is used by confidential and public clients to exchange an authorization code for an access token. Okay, so here exchange of authorization code is happening for an access token. After the user returns to the client via the redirect URL, the application will get the authorization code from the URL and use it to request an access token. Okay, so here a kind of code exchange is happening to get an access token. We'll definitely understand more on this, but not in this topic we are going to discuss. But yeah, further we can see how this thing is working. We can understand the workflow, and then we can configure in PingFederate, and then we can test also using Postman. Second one is auth code with PKCE flow. PKCE means proof key for code exchange. So what is exactly this? So it's an extension to the authorization code flow only to prevent CSRF and authorization code injection attack. Okay, these are the two kinds of attacks, CSRF and authorization code injection. So it basically is the extension of authorization code flow to prevent these attacks. PKCE is not a form of client authentication, and PKCE is not a replacement for a client secret or client authentication. Okay, it's not a replacement of client secret. PKCE is recommended if a client is using a client secret or other form of client authentication like private key, JWT. Note, because PKCE is not a replacement for client authentication, it does not allow treating a public client as a confidential client. Okay, PKCE was originally designed to protect the authorization code flow in mobile apps, but its ability to prevent authorization code injection makes it useful for every type of OAuth client, even web apps that use client authentication. So basically it's designed for some purpose like mobile apps, as is mentioned that to protect the authorization code flow in the mobile apps, but its ability to prevent authorization code injection attacks. So that's why people are using this in the web application also. So we can understand the workflow, then you will get clear of all those things, how this work and how things are happening. Now let's jump to implicit grant. So what it says, the implicit flow was a simplified OAuth flow previously recommended for native apps and JavaScript apps where the access token was written immediately without an extra authorization code exchange. So you can see that in the first auth code we have a code exchange to get an access token, but in the implicit it's not happening like that. You're directly getting the access token. Okay, so it's not recommended. That's why it's not recommended to use the implicit flow due to the inherent risk of returning access tokens in an HTTP redirect without any confirmation that it has been received by the client. Okay, public clients such as native apps and JavaScript apps should now use the authorization code flow with the PKCE extension instead. So yeah, that's why this client is not recommended, and like the native apps and JavaScript apps nowadays are using the authorization code flow with PKCE extension. Yeah, we can talk further in later sections. Then we have ROPC, resource owner password credential. Though we do not recommend it, highly trusted application can use the ROPC, resource owner password flow, defined in this OAuth 2.2 RFC 6749 section 4.3, which requests that user provide credentials like username and password, typically using an interactive form. Because credentials are sent to the backend and can be stored for future use before being exchanged for an access token, it is imperative that the application is absolutely trusted with this information. Even if the condition is met, the ROPC flow should only be used when redirect based flows like the authorization code flow cannot be used. So basically it's not recommended, because here you're just providing the username and password over to that flow, OAuth flow, and then it basically stored for future use that is mentioned in the backend server to exchange an access tokens. It's a kind of risky, and it's not recommended to use this. But yeah, if we have like just first try the authorization code flow. If it is not feasible, then you can go for this. But yeah, with some definitely with the trusted applications you can work. Otherwise, it's risky. We can talk more in the workflow section. Then you have the client credential grant. The client credential grant is used by clients to obtain access token outside of the context of a user. Okay, it's basically where the user context is not playing any role in this grant. This is typically used by clients to access resources about themselves rather than to access a user's resource. Okay, it's not talking about a user's perspective. It's talking about the access resource about themselves, like clients trying to access resource about themselves rather than to access a user resource. That's why it's a context. It's outside the context of a user. Okay, it's a kind of machine to machine transaction. We can talk further, okay, in the workflow. But yeah, that is about client credential. Device code flow is the OAuth 2.0 device authorization grant, formerly known as the device flow, is an OAuth 2.0 extension that enables device with no browser or limited input capability to obtain an access token. Okay, where you have the application which is not having the capability of to talk to browser. Okay, so in those cases, like for an example, like Apple TV apps or device like hardware encoders that can stream video to YouTube channel. So on this type of thing scenario, we are using device code flow, but we can talk definitely. I'll just help you to understand the scenario, and we have some security consideration also we need to look here. So we'll talk on those part. Then we have refresh token grant. The refresh token grant is used by clients to exchange a refresh token for an access token when the access token is expired. Okay, so just if your access token is expiring, so you can just use the refresh token to get a new access token. This allows clients to continue to have a valid access token without further interaction with the user. So user interaction is not there, and you'll get a valid access token using the help of refresh token grant. Okay, so this is all about this section, and I hope you understand. So let's jump to the next sections, and we can talk. I think it's PF28 part 2, that is back channel versus front channel communication in OAuth system. Okay. If you have any confusion, I think it will be resolved like in further sessions once we cover these all grants in a detailed manner. Okay. So till the time, yeah, maybe you can I just share some website addresses. Okay, so we can just go through and read this information. Okay. Thank you.